Hey everyone, and welcome to the Summoning Hour podcast. This is episode 3 of the re-kickoff tour. Here we go, and we're coming out swinging this week. I've got my guest Tamerlane Barak with us, and today we're discussing monetization. But first, Tamerlane, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here to talk shop with you about monetization, and you know, just love. I'm excited to get some yapping
There
going.
you go. So maybe a little bit of your background. Where you been? What have you been up to? How are you talking about monetization, and where are you coming from?
Totally, yeah. Yeah, so I've been, working in games for nearly 10 years. I really have. It's kind of like interesting. I tell people like, monetization is something that I'm really interested in, but it's not something that often work in because it's like very rare for a company to external to a PM role be like, oh, I'm going to hire like specifically a monetization designer. There are literally like a handful of us that like, I'm connected. We have a network. I'm connected with like almost all of the people that are like specifically monetization design. But yeah, I mean, I started my career off at Riot Games. I worked there for about 3 years. That was really, I call that my formative years. I didn't go to college at the time. I just tossed myself into the trenches at Riot, suffered ego death, and continued on to my career afterwards. Yeah, I've worked on a couple of different projects since then. At Activision, I worked at on Call of Duty Mobile, where I learned a lot about monetization strategies. But I think really what kind of built up my understanding is that at the same time, while all of this happening, I decided during the pandemic that I would be going to, pursue higher education at the same time while working full time. So I was doing full time school, full time education. I focused on sociology, specializing in socioeconomics, and I started building up an understanding on like why do people spend, why do people engage, why do people do stuff. And I realized, we really don't think about it that much as to like the whys. We just do the thing, and there's not a lot of like logic and nuance and rationalization external to like some psychological elements of like, oh well, they do this because it makes them feel like this. And it's like, well, that's but like, what about longevity? What about how do we, instead of focusing on converting your like making more whales or making your whales spend more money, what about questions like how do I get people from different socioeconomic backgrounds to engage? There's a lot to talk about there that I'm like interested to like kind of like dive in with you, but like in premise, I am a monetization designer in the sense of I'm very passionate about it, and in that I would say, a lot of insights to give from the perspective of someone who engages with it on an academic basis, but I also have like applied work through it, through like just through the work that I've done, at Activision, at Gala Games, and on other initiatives, including at Other Side, where I'm currently working. And there's a lot to it. There's a lot to it. There's a lot of aspects to it, but you can summarize the entire premise of what it really is as engaging in monetization through the lens of a designer, which means engaging with empathy and recognition and comprehension of the player
There you
experience.
go. Podcast solved. Like you just described all of monetization and where we could take this conversation. So I know you have the socioeconomic background discussion at your heart, and I want to get there because that sounds really interesting to me, as that's not something that's widely discussed or even approached, really. But I want to start with this question first. What is monetization actually solving besides making money?
I mean, what I kind of think about when it comes to that is, I mean, the joking answer I think is I like to say, well, it keeps us employed, right? But it's really not a joke at the same time, right? Ultimately, like, why do we monetize? Well, we monetize so we have a product that's ongoing. That way, we can, instead of engaging in the traditional, like contract system that we've had in the games, where you make a game, everyone gets laid off, you look for the next gig over and over again, repeat, that people can retain like longevity. The mythical game developer 401k, right? And that's really like, I mean, obviously part of the equation, but the other aspect is really like monetization builds up this like type of connection and loyalty towards your product. It establishes psychological elements like, sunk cost and feeling like, oh, I've committed to this. which, when you think about it at a high level, it's like, oh, that's toxic. You're trying to gaslight your players to like stay and all that. And it's like, well, yes, but ultimately, I also think that, as the developer, I'm thinking to myself, well, I'm making the best possible experience that they can experience anyway. So why not give me that money? Because I'm better to, I as a developer, in theory, have the confidence of knowing that I'm making the best possible thing that they could be spending their money on. Whether or not that's true is, up in the air, but the developer should generally be framing it as I'm doing the thing. I should be the one getting that money because I am making the thing they need and want. So really, it's trying to make sure that you engage the customer. And I think that was a really it's an interesting question in the sense of there are like game developers that I'll talk to. I mean, the joke I've told people is one of the most difficult things to do in game development is convince a game developer to actually like think about the money.
Yeah.
Like specifically the developer, biz dev people, sure, that's fine, right? But like when I'm like, hey, like game devs, like I come into there, I always make the same joke when I'm doing like any like discussion where I'm like, oh yeah, so I'm the person that comes in and tells you, yeah, you can't just make the thing. I need you to make the thing that gets us money. And then they're like, man, they're ruining the fun, right? And I'm like, yeah, but like we need to stay afloat. And ultimately, it's a matter of like when we see a lot of these studios, especially come up and about, right? Like they come in and they're just like, oh yeah, like I want to make a game. I have this proposal of a game that's like. I actually only want to do unit sales. I have no intention of ever monetizing, but I just want to do unit sales and like I just want to make the game this one time thing and I don't want to think about it. Then you run into this issue where they're like, okay, but like now how do I make this last long enough so I can retain and recoup my costs? Am I have a, is my game? Do I think is making a game good enough, sufficient enough to then get the unit sales? And that's certainly like, no, the answer to that is no. You can make the best game of all time, and it may not just move the needle with unit sales. There has to be more to it. There has to be deeper aspects to it. It's not just monetization. It's also like your go-to-market, your post-GTM kind of like growth plan, other avenues like that. And all these factors all external to the core gameplay loop and the core gameplay experience. But in essence, yeah, monetization is, the way to stay alive in game development at the end of the day in this ecosystem.
I think one thing that you just said, that box sales being something that sustains you from one iteration of your game to the next is the old model that we had in the early 2000s, but we're starting to get back to that with games like Baldur's Gate, Expedition 33, being like those games that are worth that purchase sale because it reflects that quality. And now we're coming up to that Titanic ship that everyone else is avoiding, like the iceberg, GTA 6 coming out with its pre-orders just announced, its box prices $80 and $100. Like they are charging like they are the best game ever made, and they're obviously capitalizing on the hype and even the business. Everyone avoiding it. They're like, okay, we know that no one else is spending money at this time. We could charge more for that box product. How do you position that increase in prices? We've already started seeing it with other games and that increase of box prices. But how do you position GTA 6 amongst all of that? Because you could look at Fortnite and Roblox numbers and how they've dropped since GTA Online came out. And then you can see the increase in box prices. And obviously the dev costs for GTA 6 are astronomically huge. So it seems like that there's an easy connection to development, hype, the market, and then their price. Is there anything else that you're seeing going on?
Yeah. Well, I mean, related to GTA 6, first one, it's like I think that they are charging less than I expected, actually. And I'm not saying I didn't expect their base price to be $100. That was a rumor, right? And I was like, it's goofy. Like people were asking them to go to $100, and I'm like, I don't. This goes back to the premise of the socioeconomic thing that like it would have been a terrible idea. But Forza 6 just launched, and I'm sure they breathed a little bit of a sigh of relief when they saw that because Forza 6 launched to incredibly successful numbers, and if I recall correctly, generated, I believe, $6 million in early access purchases. And I believe their early access was like, if I remember, 150 or something, like 4-day early access. And it's like, people will pay. So I looked at it and I was like, oh man, like that's an eye-opening thing to look at and see occur in that, like, customers are willing to pay. Customers are willing to engage. Does that mean it's the correct decision? Certainly not. But does that mean that is there like missed opportunity on the table? Yeah, absolutely. And right now, when I look at like when I look at like GTA, I'm just like, okay, I mean, the pre-orders being 80.99, like that, $80 and $99 respectively for the two editions makes me feel like, they found like what they believe is like a middle ground, which is again like really surprised by that. But also, I recognize that there's like people don't have money. Genuinely, they do not have money. People don't have the capacity to engage. The CEO of Xbox, Asha, came out and essentially was like games are not accessible. The Steam machine just got announced at what is it, $1,000 plus for a 512 gigabyte version of it with no controller, or if you want to get the base model with 2 terabytes and was it two? I think it's might be one or two controllers. It might be one controller. It's like $1,500, and I'm sitting there going like, who's this for, right? But then I also recognize and look around and I'm like, is there anything for anybody, right?
I mean, you got Xbox prices going to be jacked up again in September. You've got the Switch that was already criticized for its pricing last year, and now we're in a worse hardware and material cost for everything right now. And Valve already came out and said that they're not willing to subsidize the cost of consoles of their Steam machines. So we're here, and this is who's going to be buying this stuff. There was already a resistance to the VR headsets 2-3 years prior, and they were costing $500, $400. And so now we're looking at even more extravagant entertainment expenses when like GTA 6 is going to come out for the current generation of consoles. It's going to play just as well, if not better, than some other games that have been coming out. And there's only the price of admission. And it's going to have the online components too, which is going to extend the quality and the amount of content that you have to play. So I think the savvy gamer is already going, I'm going to get 500 hours out of this. What does that break down to? $5 an hour at worst?
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about it like that, and I hear that, and I hear gamers talk about it like that too, and I hear gamers gaslight themselves using that logic, and I don't like it because converting that pricing, the gameplay to like your gameplay hours, converting that to like a how much is this per hour kind of angle is a strategy that I've seen old guard use a lot to justify making a mediocre product, but also doing things that are kind of like I think kind of screwed up. A big one is like old school RuneScape recently increased their price threshold. I believe I remember if I look it up real quick, like old school RuneScape price subscription, I believe is like $14.99 a month. For on World of Warcraft, I can pay $14.99 a month. Or whatever, I believe, and I will get the capacity to make like what, like 20, 30, I don't even remember, like 20, 30 characters on a variety of different servers. Every class, I can try everything I want to try. On old school RuneScape, I pay $14.99 for one character. I'll see people in the chats and like and communities, and they're just like, "Well, I've put in 25,000 hours in old school RuneScape, so therefore, like, this is great money, and I play 30 hours a week on old school RuneScape, and this is great." And I'm like, guys, like, we're watching as people are doing these things that are like they're doing it because they need to. I mean, ultimately, Jagex, I'm not gonna fault them for their decision. It's not their fault. They have to do it because I believe they're still owned by a venture capitalist organization that's meaning wants their money back, right? And so like I'm like, okay, cool, they're doing the thing they have to do, but players need to not be like, hey, like I'm okay, like taking the hit,
Yeah.
because all it does is it just simply allows and enables companies to say, well, if they take this, what else can they take, right? They limit test it. I mean, we see it in like the real world external to games when we see like a company when tariffs happen and prices all go up, or we see supply chain issues and prices all go up, and then do prices come down? No, they saw that you could stomach it, right? They saw you could stomach it, so they're like, okay, cool, we'll just keep it at this new high, and we're just gonna let you go higher and higher and higher, right? So it's challenging. It's really challenging, and I don't really know what you're supposed to do in these scenarios when the consumer is engaging in like a little bit of delusion on like what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. But at the same time, I also recognize on the developer end that like things have to be done sometimes. Now, the thing I don't like really is that back in the day, right? The 2000s and like 2010s, right? Like consoles were loss leaders, Nintendo being the exception, right? Nintendo was like, I don't care about the rules. I'll always make money with my consoles.
Right.
And that's fine, right? Underpowered consoles that are handheld or whatever, and they're like, it's fine. Like, our customers will buy it because we're Nintendo. And I'm like, okay, but that's sure, right? But the PlayStation console, like PlayStation 2, is 100% a loss leader, right? But look at the level of notoriety and like notoriety, maybe not the right word, but like the amount of clout PlayStation got with the PS2, the PS3, right? The PS3 obviously was much worse in terms of performance, if I remember correctly, versus the Xbox 360, which had like literally like the high level of virality, right? And then obviously it inverted with the PS4 with the Xbox One. But like historically, these products have been loss leaders. They subsidize some of the cost with the expectation that they're going to make money back from you engaging in it. And this is a philosophy that has always been healthy in game development. I recognize that I am not making money at the moment, but I'm going to grow into making money. But what's shifted? We've shifted to, I need money now. Our quarterly profits are down this month. Lay off everybody to offset the damages. We are thinking over. We've engaged in. I kind of frame it as like this like deviancy of shareholder primacy, right? Where people are essentially like, okay, well, I have money invested in you, so I want my money back now.
Yeah.
But you're like, okay, but I can get you your money back in a year or two, and it'll be a lot better. And if we just slow it down, like you're gonna get a lot more money because people will be people will be more engaged. Generally speaking, it's a lot more effective to do the strategy of like, let's go and engage in casual non-spender conversion campaigns, strategies that get people to engage and build up and grow, rather than just simply being, let's get all that money right now. And if we're not a massive virality success, like cull the herd immediately, right? That's where the West is floundering. That's why, and when I say the West, I don't mean the West. Europe's doing great. That's where America is floundering, because we've engaged into this kind of post late stage capitalism mindset, like we've in the span of only a couple of years, where we were like, we need money now. We need that money as effectively as possible. You guys promised me free money during COVID because of the low interest rates, and now they're coming calling, and everything is feeling like it's collapsing. Meanwhile, China is like doing the thing that they've always done, which is, I will plant this seed, it'll grow into a tree. I will likely not be underneath the tree, right? Kind of angle, right? Like that entire like notion of like, make something that is going to be generational, make something that's going to last. And in Europe, they're doing that too. I mean, look at Helldivers, right? Like Helldivers has been around for, what is it, more than 2 years at this point. And they still have a healthy player base. They've never had like the insane Battlefield 6 launch player base, sure, but they have a core loyal player base that are spending. And we're just not recognizing the philosophies necessary to engage anymore.
And I think the best thing that came out of the Summer Games Showcase announcements, Guild Wars 3. It brings the attention back to a company who's doing exactly what you're saying. No subscription. It's all microtransactions around cosmetics or convenience, making it convenient for the player to come back, even so much as their living world strategy. If you logged in one time, not even for like minimum 5 minutes during the 2 weeks that a episode launched, it was added to your account for free. If you didn't after that time, I think it was $20 per episode, and it wasn't available until like the end of the season or something like that. But it was come in and play and then leave. You weren't held hostage, as Colin Johansson said about what they're trying to avoid with the next iteration of the MMO in Guild Wars 3. But being able to have that convenience, that not holding players accountable for FOMO or buy the battle pass and sink your time in and be held hostage by what you have to play to earn your cost back, which I think is what you were saying a little bit about the gaslighting yourself about play hours to what you're going to pay. So that model seems genuine and player focused, which is not a lot of the models that you see now. Battle passes rampant, loot boxes still showing up in like gacha games and mobile games that are very much just centered around click the buttons, fill the bars, go, 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 because it's all that initial kind of maybe devious pattern to get you just kind of addicted to the patterns and the motions, which I'm hugely against. So
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to touch on that. Like, Like here's the thing, right? Like I think battle passes and these types of like FOMO mechanics are completely fine, but they have to be executed with what their intentions are, right? When you make a battle pass and you make these like FOMO models and you're like, oh yeah, like my battle pass, I needed to generate a shit ton of revenue and make money. And I'm like, do you know what a battle pass is for? It's a loss leader, right? That is intended to get them to stay online and then spend on more interesting things, right? Literally a battle pass's entire intention is simply to keep the player online and engaged so they have more fun and more dopamine from their engagement, right? The balance is trying to avoid like dysregulation, right? Like the term that is used commonly when it comes to algorithmic behaviors is dopaminergic dysregulation. Ultimately, like when you're overexposed to things like TikTok, Instagram, or when I play League of Legends for too long, and then now I can't play God of War because I'm not getting the hits fast enough, right? That dysregulation is what needs to be avoided while engaging with it. And companies don't recognize yet that dopaminergic dysregulation ultimately is what causes this massive level of churn. I mentioned Battlefield 6 earlier, it launched to 750,000 users on launch, and then within 6 weeks had 30,000 users. And it's because they just got dysregulated dramatically, right? Because you're hitting them everywhere with all this like dopamine. And then on top of that, like the game is fun. That's the worst part. And this goes back to what we were talking about earlier. It's like making the fun game isn't what matters. It's making the fun game and then executing correctly, which means that there's a more heavy burden on product, but product doesn't recognize that burden yet. They just think they need to make a cool knickknack.
And we've been obsessed with these forever games that have to be around for 10, 20 years. Like League of Legends is struggling with getting younger players to come in. So the player base is aging out. Players who were playing originally, they're moving on with their lives. They've grown up into adults, whatever those adult decisions mean. They're not playing League of Legends as much, and there's not a product or a drive to get younger players in. It's an aging game model. I mean, Riot's already talking about League of Legends next for next year and how they're looking to address that. So these forever games just can't last. And then the like you said, the dopamine, those forever games make themselves forever accessible and make sure that there's always something else to do. More content always being added. The grind in one way or another is there, and it's to satisfy you until that next thing comes along, but you stay online. You stay engaged.
Yeah, and when it comes to Riot specifically, and that's like a good point, is like using that same thing of like where FOMO seems to be falling flat, right? Is like Riot is really smart. Now I don't know a lot about their personal philosophy, so I have to interpret it. And when I say I don't know a lot about the personal philosophies, I was there, yes, but like I wasn't engaged in monetization, right? It wasn't something I thought about at the time. But now I'm like looking back at it with my knowledge that I have now, and I'm like, oh my god, so they're quite brilliant when it comes to some of the things that they do. One thing you'll notice is they have skins available. They don't disappear for the most part. So where's the FOMO, right? But then you look at Valorant and you're like, but they do have FOMO because you'll go in and there's like a handful of skins available, bundles, and they're limited time. And if you don't buy them with the timer that's up there on the top right or whatever, and it resets, they rotate out. So you lose it. But then you're like, but then they're also healthy because it's going to come back. So if you miss it, what does that do, right? I miss the thing. That feels bad because I wanted it. But then that plants a seed in the back of your mind of like, next time I'm going to buy it for sure. And what I would say is that model is so smart in that I look at it and I'm like, I interpret it as you probably just increase the probability of them converting by like a ridiculous amount. If they're a non-spender, for example, they saw this thing and they want to now buy this thing, you probably just massively increase the probability of them converting from a non-spender to a spender simply by making them miss the thing through this like FOMO, but a FOMO in a way that isn't true FOMO. It comes back. That's the key thing. It comes back. And I think that's the problem that these other gaming companies are failing at, is they forget they need to make it come back, because if it doesn't come back, it screws them over. And then you look at Helldivers, who's like, you know what? No FOMO at all. All battle passes are available. You can join whenever you want, and you can just buy whatever you want. Buy the battle pass you want to play. It's a paper that I'm working on, a presentation that I'm working on, and I want to present it, in the future, hopefully like maybe at GDC or something, is I'm essentially framing it as no mo FOMO, right? And the idea here is I'm just like, guys, we're dated. China, used to be like the kings of engaging in that FOMO strategy and psychological, like borderline psychological, like exploitation a long time ago, right? Yeah. We like to pretend that it's still like that right now, right? And I'm like, no, guys, they have access to the most intensive level of data on player psychology known to man, and they very rapidly were like, this is making players churn. They're quitting. They're leaving. They don't want to do this anymore. In the West, we're like, yeah, but Fortnite has a battle pass, so I should have a battle pass.
Yeah.
Right. And then, and when you have that conversation, I'll be like, why? Right. And then the answer to that is, I mean, why not? And then I have to then follow up with, I need you to explain to me what the rationalization of your battle pass is. So that way I can then make sure that you're doing it for the right reasons. Because if you do it for the wrong reasons, and then you don't make it a healthy approach, all you're doing is increasing the probability of your players quitting. Now, there's this other factor to it, right? Like I am a big proponent of loot boxes, but it has to sound weird when I frame it as, I like to think that I approach things with an ethical lens, right? And then I say I like loot boxes, but I don't like loot boxes that are like traditional gotcha loot boxes. There are ways to do it in an interesting way, and I'm really excited to talk about some of the games that I think do it really well. But what I usually say is gotchification doesn't have to be monetization. It could also simply be like, I level up and I get a little crate. And, you know, Overwatch is an example of that, right? But like, I'm thinking more like League of Legends, you get a capsule that you'll open it up, and that capsule will give you a shard for your champion that you can redeem, and maybe you'll get a free champion or some blue essence. Now, I do think that there's a little bit of too many steps in the way that Riot does it for League of Legends, but like, and I think that makes it a little bit more like uninteresting to me. But I think like if it's a matter of just you click the box and you open the box, like heck, even like a normal single player game, not a single player game, but like even like a friend swap game could have like leveling systems introduced, and you just level up and you get a little box, and that box pops out. What does that do to you? You get excited to play more. You want to get another box. What's in the box, right? Like literally like that. But as long as you're not monetizing, because the second you didn't add it in, allow people to then go and buy it. Now you've now associated a monetary value to it. Now players can subconsciously calculate the value of their time, and now you lost. And then also it just feels bad because then the players are like, why should I play when I can just buy it? Which you don't want.
Yeah, I'll critique Counter-Strike and Guild Wars 2 on their, hey, you looted a box, awesome. Now you have to buy a key.
Yeah,
you're playing the game. You're playing the game, not intending on monetizing. It's to me, it comes across like an ad. By the way, you should buy this. By the way, you should buy this. By the way, Diablo 4 had really bad press initially because it kept badging the store, and the store was right next to your fast travel button or the map button, and people were clicking on confirmation when they didn't mean to, and it was funny feedback at the time. But like, that kind of in-your-face loot boxing, not quite my cup of tea. But I agree with you. Like, Heroes of the Storm did a really good job with that when they did the 2.0 loot system, and they changed that, and those boxes were giving you cosmetics, giving you access to save up faster for champs or different skins and everything. I thought it was a great shift outside of losing the mastery skins.
Good. That was such a good game. Heroes of the Storm was one of, in my opinion, I tell people, I say like Heroes of the Storm is probably one of the best games Blizzard's ever made, and I'm so disappointed. I'm so disappointed that like it like lost the like it didn't have the support necessary in the ecosystem. And yeah, I agree with you. Like that model was great. You know, really long time ago, right? You know, back in our day, right? Like we used to think to ourselves that this type of like illusionary, like you can go and play the game and do stuff, and the things will be confronted in you, make you feel like a sense of wonder because you're like, well, I could spend to get this thing. That used to be a thing, you know. But that's because players weren't exposed to an exponential number of options that didn't make them feel bad. You know, when there are only 5 games on the market at a time, you know, sure, you can do what you want, right? But like, you know, an example is like, you know, going back to RuneScape, like I was like, what, like 7, 8 years old. I was a free player on RuneScape, and I'm wandering the world, and I remember I was and there's a city called Falador, and you go past it, and on the edge of Falador there was this giant wall, and then this like door, and you'd be like, I'm a free player on a free world, and you click on it, it says you have to be a member to access this, and then you open up the map, and you're like, what's on the other side? You see this entire vast world that you just can't access because you're not paying that $5.99 a month, right? And I'm like, Mom, I need the credit card, right? Yeah. Like, you know, like kind of thing, right? But now I'm like, as an adult, I'm like, I would see that, I'd be like, I don't want to play this game.
Yep.
You know, like I'm
Absolutely.
like, I see that as an adult, I'm like, nah, that's not worth it. What a waste of time, right? I'm not going to pay money so I can access the rest of the game. What a stupid thing for me to do. Like, it's like, you know, I'll just go play Fortnite or League of Legends, right? Like, it's free. It doesn't matter, right? Gatekeeping your game to an extent, yes. DLCs, sure, whatever, that works. Like expansion packs, yes, I get it. But like gatekeeping your base, like what players will likely perceive as your base game. I mean, it doesn't work to the same level that it used to back in the day, and that's one of those things where it goes back to the premise of really it's a matter of just innovation. Right?
Yeah.
We need to stop looking at things and say, what have we done? And just do it again. Right? The thing is like, back in I usually tell people on the timeline of how the gaming industry has kind of evolved. We have like the 1980s, right? Where we had like games being like arcade games. So people are accessing games through their local communities, which was really big. You have the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s, probably mostly early 2000s when consoles became more mainstream, where you have people engaging in their console ecosystem so they can play in those, but those were generally considered very inaccessible. For example, the ESA's report from 2004 notated that 80% of people who owned a PS2 were white families, right? So then essentially you're like, okay, cool, so this is really not a thing that people can like access in any capacity, right? And then when you look at like other sets of data, like you go to the 2008, like what happened in 2008? Well, a recession, everyone was broke, people don't have money, spending power dropped. Okay, cool, freemium, right? Or mobile and phone plans like release the iPhone and all that, and they're like, well, if you can't afford the iPhone today, here's a 24-month interest-free plan, right? So you can finance your phone, right? And it worked. It was brilliant. And that those two things hand in hand, along with the mobile market then exploding at the same time, showcased the innovation there. And it was brilliant. It was really brilliant. It was really smart. Come pandemic, we innovated by, saying, all right, guys, you don't have to pay your bills. You have more money now, right? Also, you don't have to, you're working from home. Also, here's a bunch of like free money if you're like a company, and that way you can hire more people and blah, 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 and incentives to do this and that, and PPL loans and whatever, right? So many different factors all together during the pandemic. We're at the worst economic juncture since the pandemic right now in 2026, right? Like in terms of like, yes, the top 20% are like, wow, I have so much money. But the other 80% are like, wow, I have literally nothing. And nothing has changed. In fact, my quality of life has only shrank meaningfully in the last 2 years. And this time we're like, okay, guys, I know we innovated in the past, but what if we just raise all of our prices? And do literally nothing else, right? And it's because what's happening is these gaming companies, they're indexing into the K-shape. They say, okay, screw the bottom of the K. We're going to go to the top of the K. And this is what I'm doing a presentation in August at MagWest called The Future of Games. And a big notion of my topic, Future of Games, is a discussion on the gaming caste system, right? Which is essentially where I'm perceiving it as an already evident distinction between people who engage in games. And I think as game developers, we really don't see it, because I don't know if you know this, but the vast majority of game developers, I can't remember the percentage off the top of my head, but it's a very sizable percentage, come from backgrounds of affluence. And by affluence, what I don't mean is $1 million. I'm talking about like middle class. But even being middle class is sufficient enough to be completely distinct from the lived experiences of your players. And so therefore, when you're someone who grew up with a familial background of $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 a year, and you had the support network, and then you get laid off, and you're like, Mom, Dad, like I got laid off, I need some support, and they can hand you a couple $1,000s to like keep your head afloat and all that. I'm sitting here going like, no, that's not an experience that resonates with like the 90% of like people in America. 90% is probably hyperbole. I would say like 60%. But like as a result, when I frame it as the gaming caste system, and I think I want to like get your thoughts on this. What I'm trying to say essentially is there are people who can buy premium products. We see that with Forza. Forza selling $6 million in revenue, generating $6 million in revenue 4 days before launch. Right? We have people who we have two types of responses to the Steam the Gabe Cube, right? Is we have people saying, I'm going to buy that. I don't care. And we have people saying, why would I buy that? What is it giving me? Right? And that's it. You have people talking about the PS6, rumors. And like, I mean, they're very much rumors. There's no foundation in this at all. But it's like, well, the PS6 is probably going to be like $1,000, starting, right? $2,000. Not $2,000, maybe like 1.5, right? And they're like talking about that. And I'm like, I look at that, I'm like, that's insane. Why would we do that? And then you see the CEO of Xbox saying it's unsustainable, games are inaccessible. So, now the as they say, like the sharks at the top are looking down and saying nobody can, if the fish can't eat, then what do we eat, right?
Yeah. And I think Microsoft has maybe not tipped their hand, but they are looking at that innovation aspect of how can we do consoles differently. The two options that they've put out there that kind of one of them leaves a bad taste in my mouth is instead of loading screens, you get ads, and it's a free Game Pass subscription. Basically, you get free Game Pass except for a number of day one releases. And instead of loading screens, you get ads. And I'm like, ads, that kills it for me. Like I don't like ads, and if I'm going to, you see it all the time in free mobile games. You get an ad like after every action, or an ad every minute if you're really
Or
engaged,
you can
and
pay the
that's just
premium plan,
or
and you can
or you
avoid
pay
all
the
the ads.
yep.
And now they've set up that premium plan model like Netflix, and then they just increase it incrementally by $1 every 6 months
Yep. And so
until
you can
you
see
don't
that
notice.
pattern, right? The other option that's being floated is the subscription or the like payment plan to get your console. You pay over a monthly charge to eventually own your console, but until you do, the idea or my assumption is that you're locked into that free tier Game Pass unless you want to pay for it, because then it's like it comes with it, right? It's great. It's a great value if you're paying for all this. Maybe you end up paying like $5 for your Game Pass and you get out of that ad section, but like again, they're just begging you to make that small amount increase to change your experience to something better. But again, I still don't think that that's really accessible with all the
Let me.
subscriptions that
I
are
was
out
gonna.
there. Like you
Yeah.
hear all these Rocket Money ads that are going, do you know how many subscriptions you have? If we
Yeah, the
add
fact that
another,
service exists is insane, by the way. Like, I'm just saying that right now. Like, the fact that there has to be a service to monitor your subscriptions is wild to me. I'm just like, can you not just look at your bank account? But I mean, I guess not. Here's the insane thing for me about this. Really, I'm gonna touch on that really quickly, and and then I'm gonna ask you a question basically about like your thoughts on this. But I was recently reading about this. About people who engage in buy now pay later, the firm Klarna, etc. All these models have a higher probability of spend. They generally do about 30 to 40% increased spend over people who don't engage in it. But then they also generally have, as an average, $10,000 less in their checking account and like $14,000 less in their savings account. Now, there are a variety of different factors as to why that exists. Generally speaking, if you're doing buy now pay later, you probably have less money, right? But also, it showcases the really interesting thing is seeing the distinction of where they start to where they finish. So what actually happens is they start at generally being on even ground, but after 12 months of usage of BNPLs, buy now pay laters, they end up in that situation that I just mentioned, the negative 10,000, the negative 14,000. So in reality, what happens is they spend outside of their means, and what that means is that we're now indexing more deeply into exploitation of psychological elements until spenders get disenfranchised, disconnected, and suffer ruin. In 2025, we saw like a 35 or 40% increase in bankruptcies for the American citizens. Credit scores are at an all-time low. The popularity of cash advance apps has completely exploded because people literally don't have money, so they need to go onto an application like Cash App or whatever to ask for an advance of $400 so they can like last until their next paycheck and then repeat after paying back $400. We're in the bad place is essentially kind of what it looks like. And what I'm trying to say to that is talk about what the caste system again is that you mentioned it perfectly well. There's a movie and a book, Ready Player One, right? That showcases a dystopian future of what video games can look like. And I remember when we watched that years ago, we're like, that's goofy. One doesn't seem like a no. It's literally happening right now, right? We have people who can go and they can just buy the thing. And then they get to experience entertainment and excitement and happiness. We have people who can finance the thing, and then they can be subject to an ad experience that'll allow them to access the thing. Then you have people who can not buy the thing, so they have to access only free products, right? They can only access free products, but then those free products will be supplemented by advertisements, and they'll be supplemented by other types of like predatory mechanisms, or they'll just be supplemented by like cosmetics, like League of Legends and other things like that. And then you have the other like section of people who literally can't access any of these, but they're actually playing games to let their data get farmed so they can, make some money, right? Run some surveys. They play games for surveys and games for solely for the purposes of making an additional $20 a day so they can just buy food for the day. Which, by the way, fun fact, it's like 9-10 million Americans every day engage with products like that right now. There is an entire play to earn ecosystem that, and, I know I might be triggering some listeners right there when I say play to earn, because that shit it popped up and it didn't go away. They just changed. They didn't. They were like, all right, let's forget about being play to earn in AAA. We're just gonna make it hidden and then target the demographics that need it, right? The people who are literally too impoverished to be able to access anything, and they're just all AI generated games intended to do nothing but farm data so they can exploit people's experiences. All of us are going to be subject to these multifaceted experiences of what the future is going to look like, and it's not 10 years from now. It's not 20 years from now. It's today, and it's going to be getting worse in the next year or two. And this is the solution that we've decided to kind of like get to. We've decided as an industry, and not you and me naturally, but like, you know, the powers above have decided that let's not innovate anymore. Let's just take as much money as we possibly can while we still can, until there's literally nothing left. And that's where it's hard for me to look at the industry right now. And I look at it and I say, well, I see a future, you know, because I see nobody talking about the problems. I see Asha talking about problems, you know. I'm not on first name basis with her, so but you know, the CEO of Xbox talking about it, and they're like, it's inaccessible. Yes. Okay, cool. So what are we doing? Putting ads in games? Okay, that's not the solution. I don't know what the solution is, to be honest. It's certainly not the model that NZXT and the PC companies have been doing, where they let you lease a PC perpetually and you never own it, where you pay $73 a month to lease out a $4,000 PC and then you never own it and you just give it back when you're out. NVIDIA tackled it a little bit while saying, well, we can let you play with NVIDIA now, right? Or whatever. So you can, like, you know, rent an NVIDIA GPU PC something and you can stream the game, right? I'm not sure if I'm using the exact product correctly, but I'm sure you're familiar with what I'm talking about. And it's like, though I will say they did do that, and then they proceeded to then limit cap it because of AI. So we love that. Don't play too many games. So it's like every solution that exists is being half-baked, and then nobody is recognizing that at the end of the day, we're still operating with the worst mentality I've ever seen from the old guard, and that is games are recession-proof, and that is not true. We look at 2008, not recognizing that we innovated to allow games to be recession-proof. We look at 2020 and we ignore the fact that student loans were frozen, that people didn't have to pay rent, that people were working from home, and that there was unlimited free money with low interest rates, left and right. You could literally have X Riot in your name or X Blizzard in your name and go to a venture capitalist and be like, I need $10 million for this GDD. It's not even done, but I just have an idea and a dream and a bottle of tequila. And they're like, all right, here you go, 5 million. Call it a day, right? It's not that anymore. We're not there anymore, right? Yeah.
The AA studios, like,
Yeah.
they're trying to go to venture capitalists and say, we need some money. They might for like $1 million, which really doesn't.
It's not a lot.
Last the tape. It doesn't last the tape.
That's 1 year on a small team.
Yeah. And
if you're lucky.
And those venture capitalists are expecting like 5-6 times their investment at launch.
Yeah,
and
which is why, like,
you're a double A game. Like, you might sell 20,000 copies if you're a hit. Like, not everyone's going to be Mecha Chameleon and like come out like that.
Yeah.
Like,
and if you look at the Mecha Chameleon devs, they made 5 games before it.
Yeah, exactly. Your first game is going to go unknown. I mean, Among Us is another great example. That came out prior to the quarantine. It was around. No one noticed it. But then some streamers hit it during quarantine and it's popped off and it hasn't turned back since. Kudos to Innersloth for being in the right place at the right time. But it wasn't intentional.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, people think, what did they do right? How do I emulate that? I'm like, a lot of it is luck, definitely. But transparently, venture capitalists, forget about them. We'll talk about publishers instead, right? And like, you know, like things that are a little bit like less predatory in terms of like the ROI. They're happy to give money right now. Even though people are acting like there's no funding, they're just not happy to give you 5 to 10 million to 20 to 40 to 50 to $100 million to run a ridiculously sized studio, which I'm inclined to agree with. That's not what, you know, I have friends who are making games right now, and they're like, yeah, I mean, if I go and say I have a product and I want to do a go-to-market plan and I'm asking for $1 million for 12 months of headway, right? 5-person team, $1 million. That check is getting signed real fast if you have a good GTM and a good. The key thing also keep in mind is, like, a lot of our indie devs. I love you guys, but like, please, you need to get somebody to look at your like pitch deck, because the number of times I see you guys saying, "Hey, I need $2 million. I have a 5-person team. None of us have ever made a game before, and our entire we our monetization plan is unit sales and we're online play. And I'm
Yeah.
like, where? You're like, where is the money coming from, right?
Yeah.
Also, we're selling at $4. Oh, okay, cool. It's literally mathematically impossible, right? Like, where's your marketing? I have no idea. Okay, cool. People will review. We have people out there. We will review it to. You can hit me up. I will look at it for free.
And
But like,
and the day
I think,
the day
yeah,
of the GDD
yeah,
being all you need, or a good
yeah,
presentation is all you need. No, with the
yeah,
accessibility of
yeah, exactly.
tools, how easy it is to even use AI to get
You need a
yourself a
prototype.
prototype. You need a prototype. I'm not saying you need a vertical slice of everything, but you do need a prototype that can get in someone's hands so that they can feel it, so that they can understand the art direction.
Yeah.
You have to have invested
They need to feel the emotion. Yeah.
Yeah.
They need to feel your vision, right? They can't vibe check your vision.
With how prevalent and accessible games are, and how many people in positions of buying power have played a game or know someone who does, they could easily fact check themselves. They could pull an accountant down the hall into the room and say, "What do you think?" and go off of that call. I've had that happen in greenlights, like for major companies, greenlights pulling someone else who's never made a game in their life saying, "What do you think?" Because there is that shared experience and understanding of what a game is and what feels good, or they have some understanding of the games industry about what games are coming out, what big things were happening. And so, or they exist around other people. You work in a gaming company, even if you're not one of the developers, you're going to pick up on something. So
Yeah.
we have this
Yeah.
understanding. So you can't just approach people and ask for money without being able to show them something.
Yes. And the thing is, everyone, as you said, right? Everyone is able to just make something, a prototype, trivially, right? You need to approach it differently now. You need to tackle the formula differently. Candidly, there's a project that I'm casually, plotting out for my own initiatives, right? And we have this really, 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 really multi-pronged, intensive plan on what to do way before the game is even brought to the forefront of anyone's minds, like a Steam page. There's like subliminal messaging, right? Like there's like placements of like music and transmedia kind of things, right? Things to build this brand through this incredibly skilled roster of people that I've kind of casually been like, hey guys, like I have an idea, what are we guys thinking, right? And it's like, it's one of those things where like it's so much more than just making a game. At the end of the day, we've said it multiple times during this. It's no longer just I'm gonna make a good game. It's a matter of make a good game, but also recognize your market and also meet your players where they are, and also a post like a GTM, right? And also like how do I effectively like network partner and build up relationships so I know how I can get this for the cheapest possible cost of what I need to get it. It's also making sure you have a publisher that has like that you have a good relationship with good terms that aren't going to completely screw you over. There's so much to it. And all of it revolves around all of those factors, including being lean, right? And that's the key thing. You cannot make a 50-person studio, a 100-person studio and ship a game. No, keep it 5, maybe do 10, and hire out co-devs where you need it, That's what they're there for at this stage. It's after you make your first couple of games, sure, you can go and aspire to be the next Blizzard, right? But like right now, like in your first game and you're like, I'm going to make my studio and we're going to employ 200 people, it's irresponsible, really. And the thing is, a big thing, that I don't like is, the Old Guard and other folks, we talk about this like thing of making the game I want to make and the players will come to me. And I'm like, that is not how it works. Not anymore. When there are 5 games and I go to Blockbuster in 2003 and I'm renting out the game that I want to rent out and I say, Mom, okay, there are like 5 options in the PlayStation section. Can I get that one? Right? Sure. You can make whatever you want. But when there are 100,000 games and they of all varying prices, it's no longer I'm making the game I want to make. It's I'm making I identify my demographic and I make the game that I want to make that suits the vision of that demographic, and then I work collaboratively with the players through excessive and aggressive like kind of like NPS and discussions, right?
Yeah.
But
I mean,
it's
look,
sorry,
listen to the, like, this is the room. This is exactly your example of Blockbuster. 2020, Steam launched 436 games. This is off a quick SteamDB query. 2020 was
436 games in 2020. In all of 2020?
That's what I'm being told from
That seems
Steam
slightly
DB.
incorrect. I want to say it's supposed to be way more than that, right?
But
Let's see. Keep going
But
though.
the numbers that it's telling me, 2021 was 1,700, 2022 was 2,800, 2023 4,600, 2024 6,900, 2025 8,800, 2026 11,600. In 6 years, look at that scaling factor. That is
Yeah.
insane.
So I'm looking at it, Steam game releases by month, right?
Yeah.
It's like basically like every month you're looking at 700. It's like 700 to in 2020 it was 700 like approximately like every month, right? And then as you go to 2026, like March 2026, 2,467 games launched in Steam. That's a lot of competition, right? And you're not gonna win without something unique. And it's not, and it and I hate to tell the game devs out there, the aspiring indie game devs and all that, like, yeah, exactly. This chart. They there's making a good game and making art is great, but you need to also engage in that heavy legwork, right? Of like of what that GTM looks like. And I'm gonna tell you this right now. When I showed my, like, I have a meme pitch, not meme pitch, meme pitch deck, like a silly pitch deck that I just kind of tossed together just to show what my thinking is. When I was talking to people, and I was like, hey, like, my investor friends, my advisor friends, like, what do you guys think? Like, I feel like I'm doing something silly here, right? They looked at it like, oh, you have a go-to-market. I haven't seen one of these in, like, in any of the pitches that I've seen in the last month. And I'm like, wait, what do you mean? Like, is a
How do you
go-to-market
not?
literally not like a bare minimum from like anything? Like, is a go-to-market not a bare minimum simply for like a minimum viable product? Not even a game. Like, literally, like, if I'm working as a product manager on something, shouldn't I have a go-to-market for even an individual product? Not even a game, just a feature, right?
Yeah.
And it's
This is the
crazy to
case
me.
of the designers and artists and engineers going, we know how to make a game, but not market the game, not
Yeah,
sell the game, not show
yeah.
the game, not talk about the game. You could have the best team in the world, but if you can't talk about it, if you can't convince, or I mean, convincing is the wrong word. If you
It is
can't
convinced
get
though
people
to an
to,
extent.
it is. If you
Yeah.
can't connect people to your product, you
Yes.
don't have a product.
Yeah, and this is ultimately the way that I've been framing it is, like, I live in Los Angeles, expensive city, whatever, right? But I can cheat so effectively here because in Los Angeles, what I can do is, let's say I make a game and I'm in prototype, not even prototype. I haven't even shown it to publishers. I can go and I can start doing NPS surveys from like literally local game shops. Just, hey, what's up, guys? Can you play my game? And then I just ask them like user experience, like, as a designer, I know how to ask questions, right? Maybe I'm not necessarily saying I'm literally the best at it, but I'm certainly more qualified than normal layman, right? That can do it, right? So I know the questions I want to ask, and then I can get the answers that they'll give me, and then I can divine what I'm looking for based on their answers, right? Ultimately, like that design skill. And I can do that here at like 1,000 different game shops. And I can just run that over the course of a month and get a huge amount of feedback without having to go and shelling out 100K to go and like, probably like 20K to go and get like these formal playtests set up and get like these like, tailored groups. Because I actually don't want tailored groups. I just want gamers because I don't know yet, right? Then I determine, is this even fun, right? And if it is, and I'm evoking, and you set up with your like vision statement, you say like, what is my vision? What is my goal? What is my, what is the pillar that I'm looking for? I need them to feel X, Y, and Z, right? Okay, cool. Am I meeting that with the things that I'm hearing from the people, right? And like at the end of the day, like I've learned from the people at shops and stores and all that, they just want to play. They're so happy to just try a game out. Like, you go to MagFest, right? Not as I said, I'm going to MagWest, but MagFest I used to go to all the time because I'm originally from the DC area. At MagFest, it's the largest collective of gamers in the entire world. But they have like 40,000 people, all gamers. No, not really. Some game devs, but mostly just gamers. They come together for a 4-day, 24-hour LAN event, essentially, all in the Gaylord Hotel. And it's an amazing event. If anyone has not gone there, they should definitely go to it. It's really cool. It makes you remember why you make games. And I went there, and people are trying out these indie games. They're just, can I just try this out? Oh my God, it's so much fun. Oh my God, I don't like it. Oh my God. I'm like, this is, you need that. You need that experience, that exposure, that connection, these showcases. And they can't be I'm going to do it once every month. I'm going to do it every once. It needs to be you're on the ground and you're essentially hunting for feedback and insight every week, you know. So because and the thing that it's hard to like understand for people is like, this is where I feel like I got a lot of like value from Riot, is understanding that you need to get into the trenches with the players, right? If you're going to do something and you want to do a cool thing, and this applies to going back full circle to monetization. If you want to know what to do with your monetization strategies, you need to engage very deeply with your players, whether through a community manager, whether through you, the dev, literally going into the trenches and talking to them as a real person, to recognize what their lived hardships are, to recognize what their subjective experiences are. So that way you can be like, maybe it's not okay that I launched my game $5.99 USD, £5.99, €5.99 all at the same time, right? Because it's just that it's something you need to convert it, because it's everyone's experiences are different. In Brazil, we have different spending. Not we, but rather they have different spending power than they do in the U.S. And in NA, they have different experiences there than they have in the U.S. We need to understand what players are going through to be able to do anything. That whether that is making the game, whether that is monetizing the game, if you don't talk to them and you engage in the old guard dichotomy of I am the dev, that is the player, I know best, then you're just gonna see. I mean, you're from Blizzard, like it's the thing. Or you've been at Blizzard, but it's like this. It's the thing of like, do you guys not have phones? And you're like, you need to talk to them, right? And like,
Yep.
see what they're saying. What are they saying to you? It's not a matter of you can't engage in that philosophy. And it's not Blizzard. Blizzard is not the only one that is at fault. That's almost every game dev company is at the fault of doing the thing of not listening, of not and accidentally or intentionally engaging in the philosophy of you think you know what you want, and it's like that's not, to an extent it's correct in the sense of, as a designer, I need to parse their feedback, but it doesn't mean ignore everything they're saying, right?
Yep.
Like on
I
a
mean,
final note on that, it's just
yeah.
like, let me just to close this one out. It's like on that part right there, it's like one of the smartest designers I've ever worked with in my entire career was at Riot, and he said, I go every day onto Reddit and I read the anger. And I said, why? And he's like, those are the angriest and most passionate people. They may not be telling me anything productive, but if they are calling things out and it's getting upvoted to the front, there may be something there. And my job as a designer is identifying if there is anything there. There might not be anything there, but that doesn't mean it's a waste of time to just
Right.
spend 15 minutes drinking my coffee just reading, as my cats are freaking out right now.
That's a great example. It's like any YouTuber out there should be reading the comments of any of the videos that they put out. And even if there's trolls, even if there's hate posted on those comments, they still owe it to themselves and their own channel to reflect on, is that comment true? Is it holding any weight with me? They don't have to give it any more credit, whatever, if it doesn't resonate with them. It could still be something that this other person holds as true, but if the YouTuber isn't seeing that, they don't have to take it. They can keep going along their way. But you do owe it to yourself to reflect and to understand what data is there. And another great example with the World Cup going on, you see all these YouTube videos of the rest of the world is reacting to American culture. But the one thing that I think is really great is how many people from around the world are going, my God, what is with all of these commercials? There's so many commercials. So many.
Even medicine commercials. The fact that that's a thing is still insane to me, right? Like,
Yep.
my European friends, I've lived all over the world, and the European friends that I've had have just been like, this is weird. You guys are dystopian, right? And
Yeah.
and then Americans, we think to ourselves like, we are so great, but like,
We don't know anything different.
we don't know
We're
anything
not
else.
innovating.
Yeah.
We are the product at this point.
We used to innovate. That's the worst part. Like,
Yeah.
And that's the thing, right? Like, people ask me, what's changed, right? And it really is as simple as we stopped trying different things. We stopped we began this experience that, I mean, what better way to frame it than like, we regressed and we're trying to retain our status quo. We're just doing the thing, where when that tends to happen, it's, looking at it on a geopolitical aspect and less of a monetization game industry aspect. It's like the flailing of an empire, right? As they're struggling to maintain their hegemony around the world, right? And then going back into the gaming industry, we can just reframe it to the exact same thing: a flailing industry that is trying to retain its hegemony. But at the end of the day, when you look at the US, our cultural influence around the world is, dramatically dropping down, right? In the 80s, my mother, she's from Afghanistan, we're Persian, but ultimately, like, she's from Afghanistan, and she was like in the 70s and 80s, she would listen to Metallica, and she would wear like the t-shirts, the band shirts and all that. Big fan, Guns N' Roses, that kind of stuff, right? And then that's not a thing that's happening in 2026 around the world. But actually, in fact, what's happening is, for example, like, the whole trend of like putting like little like plushies on your like bags and stuff, right? Like the Labubu-esque trend, right? Very much like a influenced by Chinese culture. K-pop Demon Hunters was a huge virality, had a lot of our virality in the US, and that's ultimately East Asian culture influencing us. And that doesn't mean that we should be like, oh no, we should have an aversion to things that are different. What that means is we should have recognition that the influence that we have has diminished due to the fact that we started stagnating and not thinking of the new, the great, the special, right? We wanted to retain the our place in the world as an industry, but also just as like a collective of, we just do the same thing over and over again, and we don't expect things to change, and we just expect that people will just give up and accept it, when in reality everybody else is taking steps forward and we're just standing there, expecting people to like accommodate for the space that we've
We
created.
stopped playing to win and we played not to lose.
Exactly. I think that's a good way to frame it. Yeah. And it's sad, I think, because I think that at the end of the day, there's a reason why European companies are looking at the US and saying, hey, I mean, I get that we don't want to give you money, but why don't you come here, right? Because the talent, the skill, the ICs, and this is like a shout out to you game devs out there. Like, you guys are fucking good, right? Like, you're not bad game devs because of the fact that you're unemployed right now. You're not bad game devs because of the fact that you're struggling right now. What's really happening here is that the system is not fair anymore, and it's built up and propped up on its death's row because of the fact that there are powers external even to your leadership on your studios, but rather just everything around there, that are all essentially mandating record profits quarter over quarter that are not conducive to success. And then if you were to be in any other place that allowed you the opportunity to be able to do and execute the visions that you have, you would be amazing. Like, I guarantee to you that if you were at a place that gave you the capacity to succeed and gave you the tools necessary to succeed, that you would be amazing, that you would be a stellar candidate. And that doesn't mean I'm telling you to be bitter about it and be like, oh man, I'm cranky because I worked at XYZ company and they laid me off and it's because they didn't give me the agency. What I'm telling you is just to take that feeling, turn it into hunger and ambition, and then connect that to what you need to do. Identify what you need to do to be able to execute and be able to get ahead. The best way you can, I tell people the best way I succeed is through spite. When people tell me I can't do a thing, I get angry and I demand space given to me through my hard work, my diligence, and the effort that I put in. And I'm telling you, game devs out there, the same thing. Take that, take this feeling that you have, that anxiety, that strain that you have, get hungry and execute. Because the best way that you can show up the people who you think are the powers to be that have failed you is to do something so phenomenal that you can stand at as a game of the year, winning an award, and you look back at them and say, "Hey, you said I couldn't," right? But that's just me. Maybe not everyone is driven by spite.
Tamerlane
Ultimately,
popping off.
yeah. Ultimately, my entire career has been that. Well, I grew up, being told I'll never be able to amount to anything. I graduated with a high school with a GPA of like a 1.2. Basically, I got no child left behind it out of high school. Admittedly, it's because I have severe ADHD and I'm now diagnosed and medicated now. But like, I didn't have medication all throughout my entire young adult life. Nobody helped me there. I just had to deal with it. I got told that I wouldn't be able to, get into college. I was told that I can't get a job in games. I was told that when I was a game developer, when I started in games, that I couldn't become a game designer. I was told that as a game designer, I don't know anything and that I can't actually accomplish anything with the knowledge that I've gained. I've been told that when I made a nonprofit, I made a club in UC San Diego, I was told that I would never be able to make an organization that's successful in the span of time necessary. Every single time that someone has told me that it is impossible and I can't do the thing, I've subverted expectations. I graduated from high school, yes, and I didn't go to college, but I went, and my alma mater is UC San Diego. Like I graduated with 1.2, and then I ended up at UC San Diego at 25 years old, graduating at 30 with a 3.9 GPA in my field. I got a job at Riot, and then I became a game designer later. When people told me I can't make a nonprofit, I made my keyboard club. They told me it's never going to be successful. And in the first year, I had 30,000 people attend my events. So like, I'm sitting there going like, you people who tell me I can't do a thing, if your only evidence of I can't do a thing is your empirical evidence and your subjective lived experiences, then I'm going to decline that. If I feel confident that there is something there and I have my own evidence and my own sentiment and my own data that suggests that I can do it. I'm not just that doesn't mean I'm going to sit back and that doesn't mean that I'm going to be like, hey, I'm going to ignore everything you're saying to me. I'll listen. I'm willing to hear you out. I'm willing to understand, and I'll probably even deviate my plans contingent on the things that are being told to me by people who are smarter than me, because there are a lot of people. There are a lot of people smarter than I am. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to blindly follow, elder advice, right?
Right.
My someone says this is just how it is, I say why, and that's the first question I always ask. One of the values that Riot gave me that I will never let go of is the willingness and desire to challenge convention. Just because we do it does not mean we should keep doing it, right? And that applies to me, but that applies to the devs out there, but it also just applies to games in general. Just because we do does not mean we should continue to do so. There is something there is an industry here. This industry will continue to exist in some avenue. AI is not going to nuke us immediately, right? Maybe in the future, who knows, right? I don't know. I don't want to predict what AI will do to jobs, and there's a certain point where we have to look at it and be like, okay, we're all cooked anyway, so it doesn't matter. But I ignore that facet of society, and I instead look at what I have a better grasp on, a better capacity to predict in. And as someone who I like to think that I have a very frustrating level of accuracy when it comes to my predictions. And it actually kind of sucks because GTA, I shot called it correctly, right? Like the price is like literally like 6 months ago. I said it's going to be this price. And I'm like, well, that's cool. But then I also predict other things too, like outcomes of like what I expect is going to happen at like studios, all that. And I do it all for myself because I like to just measure. I like to shot call everything so I can measure against my accuracy. And I'll tell you guys right now, like my prediction for the future of games is a future of games where a lot of the entry levels are going to continue to struggle to get in. Yes, for now, for the short term. But what's really going to happen is elder devs are the ones that are going to get filtered out. And then there's going to be potentially a lot of agency through that generation, this, we'll call us the lost millennial generation, right? That, has the capacity to identify, if they execute correctly, a way to take steps forward. And we're seeing that with record studios starting up every year of people trying their own initiatives because they're like, I'm sick and tired of being a part of the hegemony, right? I want to try my own thing. I want to do the thing that I think I want to do and execute. All I'm encouraging you guys to do is just execute it, make the game, but also just make sure that you have those advisors and like those support networks that you need so you can make sure that you're on the right track, because you want that advice. You don't necessarily want them to do the thing for you, but you want that to inform your decisions ultimately. So you're making the most informed decision. So you don't sign a contract where you get $1 million and then they expect 5x return on launch day, right? Like versus like maybe you'll get a deal that's like $1 million and they want 30% of all revenue for the first 2 million, and then they let you have all revenue after, right? Which is an example of like, that's a publisher agreement that exists right now. You can find stuff like that. That's like it still feels like a shitty deal, but that's so much better than 5x on launch, right? And then we all get laid off, right? So there's a lot here in the grand scheme of things, but like, I guess what I'm trying to say here is, monetization aside, it's like, there's a future, right? There is a future. Yeah. For all of us, and we need to be hopeful. And I've been someone who's been I was unemployed back in 2022 for about 6 months, 5 months, and that really sucked. And I've had friends that we all at this point in this industry, I think every single person in the gaming industry who's been in it for at least like 2 to 3 years probably knows at least one person who has lost their job, right? And the best thing we can really do is just connect with each other, think about it, talk to each other. plot out what our futures could look like in the best case scenario, but in our worst case scenario, at least talk to each other and be there for each other, right? Because when the going gets fucking tough, I mean, we're a really strong, resilient community of game developers. And guys, like, I've been told, I don't agree with these words, but I'm going to paraphrase these words, right? But it's like, in an industry where you get used and abused, right? All of us have shared trauma of these challenging, tumultuous and difficult experiences in game development. And so the best thing we can do is be there for each other so we can get through the turbulent times. I mean, this is why I love Amir, is, not necessarily like when I say Amir, I mean like Amir himself, right? Is this like sentiment of hope. Yes, sometimes he posts and he's like, I'm angry, I'm upset and all that. But like what I really see there is this kind of resilience in bringing people together through a singular point of contact. And that can be you. You just message your friend and say, hey man, are you doing okay? How are you? Just checking in once a week. Set it up. I'm neurodivergent and I like to make a spreadsheet, my networking spreadsheet, but it's not really networking. It's literally just a mental health check-in. Like, are you good? I'm just checking in on you. Are you doing okay? And guess what? Those people will hopefully think about you, right? And then you use that to establish a strong social network and build it up and build communities and connections so you can all grow together. Because at the end of the day, this isn't an individualist thing. We need to divert ourselves from the way that we're raised up in the United States is the sense of individualism. We're a collective of traumatized game developers that need to be able to get support and care from each other so we can make it to the future as we get shut down left, right, up, down, until we can figure out the vision of what we need to do. But that was really a huge, huge shift from like what I kind of like, from monetization, and rather just really me like wanting to think to it and say like, it sucks, but it's not the worst that it could be, and we have each other.
I mean, I think it was a perfect bridge. Like monetization is something that bridges so many of the games that are coming out, are in development, or people are trying to get kicked off. They have to know about that, but we have to connect back to the people making them, back to the players, and understand we're all just trying to make games the best that we can, the way that we want to, and we've stagnated, and we need to do something a little bit different, and that's where everyone's coming in at. That's how the sentiments are. People want to take care of each other. If we ask each other, do you want a job? Do you want to make a game? All of us say yes. We just want to be able to live a life and make a game. So I think, Tamerlane, that was a great note to wrap up on, and like some huge, huge diamonds in that last little bit from you, which I really, really appreciate. But I think we're at time for now, and I'll definitely be inviting you back for further conversations. It was absolutely great talking to you. I will put Tamerlane's LinkedIn link in the show notes, so be sure to reach out to him there if you have questions, comments, or just want to connect and talk monetization to help with your own GDD and go-to-market plan. So Tamerlane, it was great talking with you. Great having you on. Any last words of wisdom before we wrap up?
Yeah, of course. Again, thank you so much for inviting me. These conversations, I think, are important to have from a variety of different lenses and a variety of different perspectives. And, for everybody out there, like, I guess, please, like, I am someone who strives really hard to focus around mental health but also like social networks and social elevation, so we can like connect with each other and build each other up where we need to get to. If anyone wants to hit me up, as we said, like my LinkedIn will be there, but, be on the lookout. There are cool stuff coming out on my end as well. I'm going to several events to do talks. If anyone ever wants to just chat with me, we'll coffee chat about discussions, hit me up. But yeah, otherwise, again, thank you so much for inviting me. I gained a lot from the conversation as well, so I appreciate
it. Great. I'm glad you enjoyed your time, and thanks everyone for listening in. We will come back next week with another episode.